Hey guys, welcome back to another lesson. Today I'd like to talk to you about a cool kind of chord which I call the big sus chord. And it's just a name I made up, it's not the formal name or anything. And let me just start by playing the chord, and this is going to be this G sus chord. Now, let me start by giving you a simple example where you might use it. Well, you might use it anywhere you see a dominant 7th chord. So if you see a G dominant 7th, you can substitute it for this big sus chord. So for example, if you have a G dominant 7th going into a C major, so a very simple kind of harmonic progression, you might play instead so this G big sus chord to a C major. Now the reason I call this a big sus chord is because if you look at the notes, then for a G you have a G, D, A, C, F, A, and C. Now this is the root, the 5th, the sus, the 2nd degree, 4th degree, and then you have the 7th and 9th, and again the 4th degree. So nowhere in here is there a note that makes this either a major or a minor chord. So it's a sus chord, and not only is it a sus chord, standing for sustained, it also has the sus2 and the sus4, the 2nd and 4th degrees in there. This A, which is the 2nd, and this C, which is the 4th. So it's kind of a very cool, suspenseful sounding chord. And you can use it for a lot of different things. Again, the major one is wherever you see a dominant 7th chord, you can put in this big sus chord. And take a moment to practice this over all 12 possible notes. So, a G big sus chord, or a C big sus chord, and so on. And for the remainder of this video, let me show you a couple of cool examples of where you might use this. So one of them is this dominant 7th to the tonic resolution, and another has to do with, let's say, modulating to a different key. So let's say that I'm playing in the key of C major, and what I want to do is modulate to, let's say, the key of E major. So the way I do this is using a 5-1, or what's called a secondary dominant, where I would play a C major chord, say, or a C dominant 7th, or whatever, and then I'd play a B and an E. And what I'm doing here is I'm preceding the E by the 5th degree in the E major scale. So I have the E major scale, and I have this B chord going to the root, the E chord. And once you use this big sus chord to voice the B, then you get a really nice, lush sounding progression, which sounds like this. So start with the C, and then you go for the big sus B chord. So put together, and back to the C. And I could do maybe this is an F big sus chord, and this naturally leads to the B flat major chord. Just because if you think about the B flat major scale, then the 5th degree here is an F, which leads into the B flat. So F big sus to a B flat major 7. And so on. And you can modulate between these different keys, and this gives a really, really nice kind of sounding modulation, I'd say. Another thing that you can sort of do with this is just copy or transpose it over the keyboard. Let's say you're in the key of C major, and then you can go to this G, big sus G, to a big sus A, to a big sus B, to a D minor. So basically I'm sounds something like this. So you can kind of navigate it around, and just transposing it, I think, gives you these nice chord progressions that are, again, very suspenseful in nature. Now, I'd like to point out that this also has, this kind of chord has a nice ambiguity to it. Let's look at this big sus G chord. So you can actually think of this as a G chord, a G dominant 7th chord with sustained degrees, or if I move things around, let's see, I have this A and A here, so I can let go of this one. This is just a doubling, so I just need one A. Then I'll take this C and C are the same, and this G goes up an octave, and then again one more octave, so G, 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 and this D goes up an octave. And I get this very cluster sounding, lush sounding F major chord. So you see there's sort of double meaning to this chord. It can be either a G, but also an F. And this is why the previous progression worked. So if you think about this, or if you look at this B chord, which is a B, big sus B, I can also think about this as an A, right? Because again, I have this A in my right hand, and if I move the notes around, this B goes up 2 octaves. This is a doubling, I let go of it. This is a doubling, an E and an E, so I just keep one E, and I take this F sharp up here. This is an A chord. And the A chord is the secondary dominant of the D minor chord. So if you were to go into a D minor chord, you might precede it by an A major chord. So this chord here can be interpreted by the listener as either a B chord or an A chord, which is kind of a nice duality. So, to summarize, wherever you see a 5-1 progression, you can use this big sus chord. Whenever you want to modulate to a different key, you can use this big sus, which is again used through a 5-1 progression. And you can also think about this as, this has this nice duality. You can move this around the keyboard, and when you reach the chord that you want to think of as the 5, you can use it to modulate to the next chord in line. So that kind of throws out some uses for this big sus chord. I hope you learned something. If you want to learn more about these basic jazz concepts like degrees and 5-1s and secondary dominants, I have an online course here on YouTube for jazz piano. It's totally free. Just look it up in the search engine, and it really lays out in an orderly manner these different concepts, and it builds up very methodologically in a more, I'd say, pedagogical manner. That's it for now. I hope you learned something interesting, and I'll see you next time.